Welcome to the College Football Bros. I'm Michael Newman.
I'm Ryan Newman.
And I'm Trey Newman.
Okay, so we released our ACC head coach rankings last week. Be sure to check that out if you haven't already. Today we're moving on to the Big 12, which is now 14 teams with the additions of BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF. And before we get to this list, I feel like we just have to say off the top, this was, I don't know for you guys, and we've talked about it a little bit, this was by far the toughest list to make in our entire history of this podcast.
Yes. I was going to say that the entire every year.
Not just this season's conferences.
Yeah. So if you see a guy at 12th that you think should be 4th, we might not even disagree that much because the margins are so
There's a
slim.
wide array.
We're trying
It's
to.
also like how you decide best coaches. Is it what they've kind of done in their tenure, or is it like factoring with the future? When I was trying to answer this question, it was just like, which coach do I want leading my program right now? I tried to.
Hey, Milo.
Yeah.
He agrees.
Overtaking
he
me.
agrees.
Yep.
It's okay. A little dog barking, no problem with that.
It happens.
Yeah. He's a good boy.
All right, let's get to number 14 now that we've kind of defended ourselves in advance.
Right. Neil Brown, West Virginia. I don't think this is that crazy though, because he has the hottest seat in the conference. We all thought very highly of him, after his strong success at Troy. But now 3 out of 4 losing seasons. He's 14-21 in the Big 12. Recruiting is towards the bottom of the league. They have a new AD in place, which always seems to light a fire under the struggling coaches. And the problem is upcoming. He's going to rely on a young and inexperienced quarterback. So most likely Brown and the Mountaineers really need to hit at that position if he wants to stay around next year.
Yeah. Okay. Number 13, we go to Dana Holgorsen of Houston. And yeah, I mean, I think there are no bad coaches in this conference because Dana Holgorsen's a good coach. He had a very solid run for a long time at West Virginia. At Houston, been kind of a mixed bag. The first couple years weren't good, but then what was it? 2021, they went 12-2, had a great season. Lost to Cincy in the conference championship, but that's nothing to be embarrassed about. And then last year, kind of par for the program, 8-5. So we'll see moving forward. We'll see if that 2021 season was an aberration or if there's more good stuff to come. Now, of course, moving up in class to the Big 12.
Yep. All right, moving on. We got number 12, new coach in the Big 12 here. We got Scott Satterfield heading to Cincinnati. Those kind of amazing Appalachian State days that he led, they're kind of seeming a little further and further away. Now 12th out of 14th doesn't seem very good. But kind of like Michael mentioned before the show, like I still like Satterfield. I think he can do really, really well at Cincinnati. He's still got some major upside potential there. Cincinnati's in a good spot because of the talent level that Luke Fickell left for him. And maybe Satterfield just wasn't the right fit at Louisville, although he still managed to field competitive squads after taking over.
Look at last year.
Terrible.
Louisville was like top 30 in SP plus FPI, whatever you want to look at. Like they were still a decent team.
And he took over a two-win team from Bobby Petrino, and he had a winning record overall at Louisville. So it's not like he had a bad tenure there. They were decent. So at Cincinnati, maybe he could do slightly better, even really well. Who knows?
All right, number 11, Kalani Sitake of BYU, and it was really hard the new coaches. It was hard to kind of place into the mix just because you don't have anything to kind of history to go on. And I'll admit that my opinion of him has improved. I didn't think much of him a few years back just because of the success that he inherited from Bronco Mendenhall, but he's really turned himself around as he was on the hot seat a few years ago. Went 11-1 with Zach Wilson. Their only loss that year was that nail biter at Coastal Carolina. They went 10-3 the following year. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Went 10-3 the following year with very low or much lower expectations. 8-5 this past year, maybe slightly disappointing, but I think this year is really going to kind of indicate if he's got the program trending up or down, or if he can at least maintain it. Brought in Keaton Slovis, who's been up and down in his career. When I look at recruiting, BYU hasn't been able to recruit well given the rules in place there. They usually rank in the 60s to 70s, but this year actually boosted it up to about 50th. So he's really going to need to develop these guys, though, as they have to face a tougher slate going into the Big 12 each year.
Okay, number 10, tough guy to place. We have Oklahoma's Brent Venables, one of the best defensive minds in college football, but zero track record as a head coach. And in his first year, yes, Oklahoma lost some transfers, but it wasn't a total mass exodus. Like, there was still a lot of talent on the roster, and he brought in a lot of quality transfers. So, in today's day and age in college football, you're not expecting a total drop-off. And it was. They went 6-7. They got murdered by Texas. Like, their season win total was 9.5. They were supposed to be good, and they weren't. Now, there were some injuries, and there's some excuses there and some close losses. But so we'll see. I mean, I love the way he recruited. That's why he's, not last on this list, right? Like, the potential is very high with him, and he's very highly regarded. He's famous, right? I feel like high school players respect him. Other coaches respect him. So if he has a bounce back year here, he can vault up this list, but he's got to show something on the field as a head coach before he's ahead of some of these guys coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. Alrighty then. Another tough guy to place here at number 9. We have Gus Malzahn from Central Florida. You could put him in the top 3, and I probably could buy it. Obviously, his time at Auburn was very successful, and I'm one of those in the belief that he shouldn't have been fired there. I mean, he won twice as many games as he lost there, and never had less than 7 wins. And his last year was the COVID year, and he went 6-4, and all those were SEC games. So, in a normal season, that's like a 9-win team. But at UCF, he's doing okay. He's 2 9-win seasons. He took over a good program that was expected to win from Josh Heupel. So it may be slightly disappointing, actually, considering what they were hoping for. But it's hard to scoff at 9 wins at UCF. So he's recruiting pretty solid, not amazing. I don't know, he's just kind of like even keel right there. So it's hard to really be excited. His offenses are not quite maybe what he kind of first came onto the scene as. So it's not really the Gus Malzahn you kind of liked at the beginning, but he's still good.
I think that was like very well put. Just like exactly how I feel about
Up and
Gus
down.
Malzahn. Like, okay.
Yeah. All right. Number 8, Dave Aranda of Baylor. He had to be obviously so much higher on everyone's list last year after winning the Big 12, finishing 12-2 with a New Year's 6 bowl win. But man, he's really had an up and down start to his career at Baylor. 2-7 in the tough year 1 COVID year, but then 12-2, like I mentioned. But then 6-7 last year after being the preseason pick to win the Big 12. He has elevated the recruiting a little bit. They're up to like around the 4th spot in the conference. So he's a guy, again, to our point, he's hard to pin on this list as it's been turbulent. Now he just has to prove if he can be consistent.
Okay, number 7, we have Texas Tech's Joey McGuire, and there is nothing negative to say about his first year. Recruiting, the coaching staff hires, just rallying the fan base, and then the on-field results. Everything was good. Most of the coaches ahead of him just have maybe a longer track record of success. It's just been 1 year for McGuire, so it's always hard to put those guys too high on the list because you just never know. But I think especially the next coach on this list is going to be controversial for Texas Tech fans. The fact that he's ahead of Joey McGuire, but I'll let Ryan make that case for us.
Yeah, I drew the short straw here, having to talk about this guy. Steve Sarkisian at Texas. They were much better in year 2 under Sark. I mean, still maybe below what Texas is looking for, of course, but they just had 8 wins, so it's hard to get super excited about that. They were unlucky though. They were a pretty good team. They're better than an 8-win team for sure. But still, 8 wins is 8 wins in the end of the day. recruited lights out for that 2023 class. So that's obviously a huge kind of feather in his cap. And he definitely has the potential to be, the best coach on this list. I mean, just kind of course, the resources at Texas and the potential that you could have there, it could allow him to be number one on this list by next year. He could win the Big 12 and they could have a huge year. Maybe go win at Bama. But it's hard to put him higher because he hasn't done it yet. So, I think 6 appropriate level. If you want to slide him down a couple, I get it. But, I feel good with him at 6.
I think it depends on how you look at last year. If you're one of those that just looks at the bottom line results, they were 8-5. It's like, yeah, he hasn't proven enough as a head coach to be ranked this high. But if you look at it as, they were 2-5 in 1-score games, and you more look at the predictive metrics or what the betting markets are valuing that team as, then you look at Texas as a lot better last year than the record. So it just kind of depends on how you look at it.
And they're supposed to be pretty good this year. So
right, as they are every year.
Yeah,
not every year, but yeah.
Number 5, Mike Gundy, Oklahoma State. Last year, I had him near the top of the league, and if you consider his whole body of work at Oklahoma State, he should be near the top, even nationally. 5 top 20 finishes in the past 8 years, multiple 10-win seasons. A couple years ago, remember, he was inches away from making the playoff. They had that brutal loss to Baylor in the Big 12 title. He has consistently outperformed expectations, always seems to develop quarterbacks in his system very well. But in my opinion, and I think Ryan and Michael agree, I usually won't overreact to one season after so many good ones that he's had. But I just kind of get the vibe that it's not all sunshine and rainbows in Stillwater. Last season went 7-6, lost 5 of the last 6 games. Been in some controversy the last couple of years. Now there's some turnover on the roster and the staff. I mean, he deserves to be in the upper portion of this list, no doubt. But I think we're kind of being cautious and not having him higher this year.
Yeah, we're hedging a little bit. He deserves to be number 1 based on his resume, right? If you're just backward looking, but forward looking, I'm bearish. So it's I guess we kind of hedged there, but I wouldn't blame someone for putting him like 10th. They just think, I think the run's over. I'm calling it. And it's like, sure.
Fair.
But like I said, he just almost made the playoff a couple years ago, so it's hard to drop him too low. But let's move on to number 4. We haven't forgotten about him. Matt Campbell of Iowa State. He's still made 5 straight bowl games at Iowa State, 5 straight winning seasons in Big 12 play up until last year, but that's at one of the worst Power 5 programs in history, arguably the worst. So he had a top 10 finish in 2020. Last year was a down year, 1-6 in 1-score games, and it wasn't a good year. But I don't think that erases what is still the greatest tenure in Iowa State football history.
Yeah, and hopefully he can bounce back this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move on to number 3. Chris Kleiman from Kansas State. This was my number 1, actually. Believe it or not, we all had different number 1s. So Kleiman was mine. So how come he? Oh, you guys were averaging. You must have guys had him lower.
We all had different number 1s. All 3
no, I know, but why is my one guy 3rd?
Because we were a little bit lower, I guess. Then
yeah. Anyways, he took over a 5-win team.
Math.
Took over a 5-win team from Bill Snyder and improved them right out of the gate. He won 8 games in his first season. He was a bit of, he had an elder statesman team that year. They were expected to be pretty solid, and they were. Then 1 year of a little bit of a rebuild after that during COVID, which we can all kind of forgive. But the last 2 years has been really good. They've won 18 games. And of course, this year they won the Big 12. I mean, that's just an incredible accomplishment at Kansas State to win the Big 12. So I give him a lot of credit for that. And that's why I put him number 1. Recruiting wise, he's doing just fine. He's going to be right there pretty much with everybody in the kind of the new Big 12. So, those types of schools are not going to keep up with OU and Texas, but he is keeping up with everybody else. And that's good if you're Kansas State. And I think he's a good enough coach to kind of, maybe outperform his recruiting rankings a little bit, at least what he's shown so far. So I don't know. I think he's going to keep it going there. I don't see him, slowing down really. I think he's going to keep Kansas State as a perennial bowl team, 7-8 wins, maybe keep going with some surprise, 10-win, 11 seasons.
Yeah, seems like they got a good culture.
Yeah.
Number 2, Lance Leipold of Kansas, and this was who I had number 1, but to our point at the top of the show, it was impossible to pick a number 1. I gave him the number 1 spot though because of his longevity and success at multiple stops. Wisconsin Whitewater, I know it's Division III, but he won 6 titles in 8 years. Then at Buffalo, a very, not a historically good program at all. He clearly improved them, going from the bottom of the MAC East. They ended up rising to 3rd, and then in his final 3 seasons, they won the division twice, got to 3 bowl games, so unprecedented success there. And then he takes over, arguably the worst Power 5 team in Kansas, goes 2-10 year 1, whatever, 6-7 last year, and they lost a bowl game to SEC Arkansas in triple overtime. Last year's team, they did things that hadn't been done at Kansas in like 15 years or more. Honestly, and it could have been better maybe if Jalen Daniels didn't get hurt. So I know in terms of like the overall team strength, they weren't, all that great, but they were incredibly better than what he inherited. Now they got some funding and upgrades coming to the stadium and the facilities. So he's clearly a good coach, and now we'll just see if he can continue to elevate him. I personally think he can.
Yep, you guys both made good cases. I could definitely see them being number 1. I had Sonny Dykes of TCU number 1, and I think I was a little higher on him to start with, so it kind of makes sense. I kept him number 1, but I just like that he's had success at several FBS stops. Louisiana Tech did a great job. Going back to Cal, in hindsight, decent job, though that was his worst tenure. SMU did a great job. And in TCU, in 1 year, he makes the national championship. He's also elevated their recruiting. He's done a great job in the portal, kind of adjusting to the new age of college football. So I like all of that. And I don't know. I just think, I don't want to overreact to last year, right? But I think, like on my national list, he's not going to be like a top 5 coach or even close to it. He's not going to be top 10, might not even be top 15. I don't know. We haven't made those lists yet, but in the Big 12, there isn't a clear elite coach. So
yeah,
I thought it was reasonable to have him number 1 here. Ryan is frozen, but
that's all right. That's all right. He can
keep
bounce
going
back
without him. So
Yeah.
let's take a look at the full list again. And Trey, I'll start with you. What stands out to you on this
Well,
list?
Yeah, you mentioned there wasn't maybe those elite coaches, and that I agree. But on the other side, like compared to some of the other conferences, there aren't as many coaches on the hot seat, it seems. Like obviously there could be some surprises, but I think like
just a
after Neil Brown, you could argue maybe, I don't know, a couple like Holgerson or Sarkisian if the season is just like an utter disaster. But really, I'm just looking at Brown right now. That's squarely on the hot seat. Other conferences, it seems like there's definitely multiple.
Yeah, no, that's true. It was just a tough list. Obviously, we've said that a million times. I don't really have anything to add other than that, honestly.
Yeah.
It was just tough. Ryan, you're back.
Oh, I'm back.
What do you got?
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing I noticed was we spelled Kalani Sitake wrong, so it's Stiaki. Here's what we got.
Oh,
there.
whoops.
Oh,
You know what? I'm gonna throw my wife Sarah under the bus because
Wow.
but she made the image, which thank you so much. And also I told her like 10 minutes before the episode, I'm like, hey, I need like 30 images. So really,
Oh man,
really it's my fault.
clutch that she came through with that much.
Yeah, I
that's
know
very
it was really impressive. And if Stiaki is the only mistake, then
Yeah.
I think we'll be okay. Ryan, I think we could have got away with it. But it's probably good that there would have been a comment.
Probably. Yeah.
All right. So
it's
that's
the
your
hardest
analysis
list to
of it?
rank and the hardest list to spell. So
Okay. Well, thank you for watching this episode or listening if you're in your podcast app, this episode of the College Football Bros. As always, subscribe to the podcast, give it a thumbs up on YouTube, and of course, let us know your thoughts in the comments below, because we know this is going to have the biggest disagreement. So I want to see where your biggest, like, do you think any guys should be 6 or 7 spots off of where they're at? Let us know. Appreciate that, and we'll see you next time.